Welcome to The Explainer. So, we're going to jump right into a wildly fascinating way to look at how your mind actually works. We usually think of ourselves as having just one single unified personality, right? But what if that's completely wrong? What if your mind isn't a single entity at all, but rather it operates way more like a complex, bustling internal organization? Well, today, we're breaking down exactly how to manage that inner organization so you can finally bring some real harmony to your daily life.
Okay, let's dive into this because I know we've all been there. You're trying to make a decision, maybe at work, maybe in your personal life, and it literally feels like there's a chaotic boardroom living right inside your head. You've got one voice yelling at you to take a massive risk and dive into a new project. Then another voice is practically screaming to play it safe and avoid failure at all costs. Oh, and then a third voice is just loudly suggesting you procrastinate and go watch TV. It is utterly exhausting. You end up with total decision paralysis, just completely drained by all these competing inner voices.
To get all that inner chaos under control, consider this the official meeting itinerary for today's review of your internal executive team. We've got 5 items on the agenda. 1, the mind's inner boardroom. 2, meet your protective managers. 3, decoding the people pleaser. 4, protecting the exiled parts. And finally, 5, becoming the inner CEO. All right, let's start with section 1, the mind's inner boardroom. So internal family systems, or IFS for short, was developed by Dr. Richard Schwartz, and it views the human psyche not as a single monolith, but as a dynamic system made up of multiple distinct parts. Think of your mind as a lively boardroom. Every single part of you acts as an employee in this boardroom. And just like real employees in a real office, each part has its very own perspective, its own underlying fears, and its own specific agenda for how your life should be run. And right at the center of all this is your core self, which we'll actually get to a bit later. Let's take a look at who's actually sitting at the table in your internal boardroom. I bet you're going to recognize a few of these common employees. You've got the overachiever, who overcommits to literally everything and just runs on the absolute brink of burnout. Then you have the skeptical protector. They're constantly questioning decisions and resisting change just to avoid risk. There's the visionary leader, who thinks big but, kind of ignores all the practical details. And of course, the avoider, who dodges complex tasks like it's their job. When these wildly different personalities clash, well, it's like assigning 10 cooks to a kitchen without a shared menu. Tensions rise, interpersonal conflicts break out inside your head, and your productivity completely bottlenecks. Moving right along to section 2, meet your protective managers. In the IFS framework, your inner security detail, your protectors, generally fall into 2 camps, managers and firefighters. Your managers are super proactive and preventative. They obsessively plan everything to stop emotional pain before it even has a chance to happen. Firefighters, on the other hand, they are highly reactive and impulsive. They jump in to numb or distract you only after things have already blown up. I absolutely love the analogy from the source material for this. Managers are the friends who create a highly detailed, meticulous PowerPoint agenda for a casual Saturday brunch. Meanwhile, your firefighters are the ones who just show up with a huge bucket of popcorn when a crisis hits, totally ready to distract you from the drama. Let's look a little closer at those managers. Their common traits include perfectionism, meaning they demand totally flawless work so nobody can ever criticize you. They also rely heavily on overthinking, paralyzing you by analyzing every single possible scenario so nothing goes wrong. And they use avoidance, steering you far, far away from anything that might trigger stress. Now, these managers might feel over the top. They might feel rigid, like complete taskmasters. But here's the thing, their intentions are absolutely golden. They're acting like overzealous safety officers, and their only goal is to keep your internal system running safely and completely free from pain. So, the crucial point is how this actually manifests. Let's look at section 3, decoding the people pleaser. The internal mantra of the people pleaser is incredibly simple. If everyone likes me, I'll be safe. We so often label people pleasing as a weakness, right? Like it's a lack of boundaries or some kind of character flaw. But through the IFS lens, we have to reframe this completely. The people pleaser is actually a highly protective, incredibly well-intentioned manager part of you. It's learned that the absolute best strategy to avoid confrontation, rejection, or danger is to just ensure everyone around you is happy. It is literally just trying to keep you safe in the boardroom. But of course, there's a massive trade-off here. On a team, this people-pleasing part creates a wonderfully positive work culture. It fosters inclusion and harmony, for sure. However, because this part prioritizes everyone else's needs way above its own just to avoid conflict, it ends up suppressing very real concerns. Unspoken frustrations start to build up.
and this can lead to passive aggressiveness and ultimately severe draining burnout. I mean, if you've ever felt completely overwhelmed simply because you couldn't say no, that is your people pleaser working overtime, and it leaves your whole internal system utterly exhausted. Which brings us to Section 4, protecting the exiled parts. Now, you might be wondering, why do these managers feel the need to work so relentlessly hard in the first place? Well, this brilliantly illustrates the core dynamic of IFS. The managers are working so hard because they're protecting your exiles. Exiles are the deeply vulnerable parts of our internal system. They carry our emotional wounds, our profound fears, and our past pain, things like childhood criticism or a really bad past rejection. The people pleaser isn't just seeking approval for the fun of it. It's practically throwing itself on a grenade so that the vulnerable, exiled parts of you never, ever have to experience that agonizing sting of rejection or criticism again.
So, who is actually supposed to be running this company? Let's pivot to Section 5, becoming the inner CEO. If the managers are exhausted and the exiles are hiding, it's time to step into the role of the ultimate leader. In IFS, that ultimate leader is your core self. Your self is your inner CEO. And when the self is in charge, it operates using the 8 C's of self-leadership, things like calmness, curiosity, compassion, and confidence. Notice how none of those words involve forcing, coercing, or micromanaging. The self navigates boardroom challenges not by forcing control over the overachiever or yelling at the avoider, but through a calm, centered presence and deeply compassionate awareness.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how practical this transition of power actually is. How do we let the self take the wheel from an overwhelmed manager part? Well, step 1, pause and check in. Stop before you react to an email and ask, okay, which part of me is reacting right now? Step 2, befriend and reassure fears. Instead of fighting your inner perfectionist, approach it with curiosity. Ask it what it's so afraid of, and reassure it that your core self can handle the situation. And step 3, break tasks into self-led micro-steps. Our parts easily get overwhelmed by the big picture, so break things down and invite your calm self to lead each tiny step. This is exactly how you unblend from an overwhelmed part.
I absolutely love this piece of advice from the source material. Give your inner critic or people pleaser an Employee of the Month mug for trying their best. I know, it sounds a little funny, but acknowledging a manager's incredibly hard work is absolutely crucial. When you validate that your inner perfectionist is really just trying to protect you, it builds trust. And when these highly strung parts finally trust that your inner CEO has things under control, they can finally step back, relax their grip, and let you lead with clarity.
We've covered a lot of ground today exploring this bustling organization inside your mind. So, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. The next time you feel tense, overwhelmed, or paralyzed by a decision at work or at home, just take a breath and ask yourself, which part of me is reacting right now? And how can my core self step up to lead? By recognizing these internal dynamics, you can transform that chaotic boardroom into a powerful, harmonious team. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.